All right. Hi, everybody who's watching the recording, and hi, everyone who's here live. We are back and we are going to cover briefly some equity strategies related to our course structure. And we'll do this each time in this series. We'll take a look at some equity strategies, and then we'll hand the microphone and the screen share over to Cal State colleagues who have agreed to share their experiences, their strategies that they've used over the last academic year with supporting students in flexible courses on their own campuses. Whether they're a teacher, a staff member, or a campus leader, I think you'll find these to be fantastic examples and useful, and they will be leading you through exercises that'll help you think through how you can apply them yourself. So first, let's talk about equity. Before we even start this conversation, I think it's useful to operationally define equity. So in the chat, use the hashtag equity and then list a few words that you associate with that concept. I see a lot of people in the chat are saying that they're new this year, and we love it. Everyone is welcome, whether you came last year or not. I see Gabriela says justice and fairness are concepts she associates with equity. Resources, support, fairness, justice, flexibility. Megan says JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And I know some people say IDEA, which is inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. There we go. Ivega says that too. Access, needs, desires, opportunities, adapting so that everyone can use it, transparency, universal design, fantastic. So you all are associating quite a few different concepts with equity. I'm just going to share with you a definition that I've been using with a group in Oakland, California, the Peralta Community College District. When we created their equity rubric and equity initiative, we decided that the dictionary definition, freedom from bias, wasn't large enough in scope. So we chose to expand the definition to mean equity is freedom from bias, assumptions, or institutional barriers that negatively impact online learners' motivations, opportunities, or accomplishments. Other campuses have additional elements to their definitions, and I encourage you to think through how you and your campus define it, especially when talking with students. In this case, you can see all of these items that we want to remove or manage are things that students don't bring with them. So we're taking a strengths-based approach rather than a deficit approach. And then when we think through different equity challenges, we know that bias, stereotype, threat, not accommodating non-dominant knowledge traditions, socioeconomic and financial factors, access, all these different challenges create those barriers for our students. So what are some different ways that students actually think about diversity, equity, and inclusion in their courses? So I've been involved in some projects, and some others have too, where we're speaking directly with students. And so Adi, Husseini, and DeVault a couple years ago got some information from students where students definitely want us to explain ideas that may seem like common knowledge. Definitely that supports first generation students and everyone. Providing supplementary materials online that are available to the whole class. And we'll talk about that in the flexible course context, the ideas of reusability, and considering the cost of course materials, whether that means using open educational resources or open textbooks. Those are just examples of how you can make cost a consideration as you look at your course. They also, and some of these terms showed up in the chat when we described the equity. The other types of things that we can see that associate with this concept is transparency and vulnerability. And I saw a good question from Constance, why does it have to be online learners only? I'm only referring to this work, but I do believe that all these concepts apply to whatever course context or delivery method. We're just talking about flexible courses in this particular session and this particular institute. So there is an online component as well as an in-person component, and we want to make sure that we're transparent and vulnerable with all of our students, not just the online students. So good question. Other feedback from students, this came from a survey from a statewide community college system, providing a copy of the syllabus before students enroll, providing a guide on how to use the learning management system, including tutorials or lessons on the basic skills they need, not just the technology, but an example a student gave is, hey, if the course requires you to read dense 60-page chapters every week, give us some strategies on how to read dense, complex readings. And then using videos that have subtitles is both an accessibility and an inclusion strategy. Then students also shared some actions or strategies that they hope teachers will follow, being communicative and having flexible office hours, adding a bio about themselves to imitate what one might learn from peers that have already taken the class, providing more videos from the instructor to humanize it, and making time to meet with the instructor either one-on-one or in small groups. So last year, when we looked at course structure and flexibility, we talked about outcomes and the course environment and the syllabus. So I'm just going to touch briefly on these because we're going to see deeper examples from our Cal State colleagues, but I wanted to at least give you a couple hooks to hang on to and think about. One is looking at your course outcomes through multiple lenses. So if you're thinking about the first generation students in your class, are your outcomes clear? Do they make any assumptions? With students with diverse abilities, do your outcomes consider accessibility and what student accommodations might be necessary? Or, as someone put in the chat, universal design for learning. Can we create multiple pathways for students to reach those outcomes? For non-traditional and returning students, do they need specific technology skills to demonstrate achievement? And have you set them up for success by making sure they can get those skills quickly and easily? Are you supporting non-native English speakers in your outcomes by avoiding jargon or defining it? In my, good Lord. In my own class, I talk a lot about metacognition. So I had to revise my outcomes around metacognition to talk about learning, and then getting into defining the term metacognition when we're actually in the class, rather than assuming students know what it means when they're looking at the outcomes in my syllabus. Last, but not least, because there may be more lenses to look through, this is just a short list. International students, do outcomes make cultural references? Do they consider global perspectives? We could add to this the lens of Indigenous students. Are we taking into consideration different knowledge traditions, different ways of learning? So you can see that this exercise is not meant to be prescriptive. It's meant to be a mindset where we think about our students and their needs when we review our outcomes. So in North Dakota, Tim Burrows created a good presentation around inclusive outcomes, making sure that you're getting to know your students as you're sharing the outcomes with them, creating opportunities for students to share their own experiences, including outcomes that increase awareness and understanding of other perspectives, and having students apply different lenses to study the same topic. And as an equity measure or method, we can help students identify their own outcomes so that they're ascribing more meaning to our classes than they might otherwise. If they identify personal outcomes that align with their values, or I know a number of instructors who work with the whole class to generate 1 or 2 additional outcomes that is co-constructed by the group. Maybe you use a Google Doc or a forum to generate ideas and then have the students vote on the ones that they think are important. And one last thing we'll cover, and then I'm going to hand the microphone over to our colleagues from around the system. Increasing equity through our syllabi can take on a couple different ways. We can look at the format, and Michelle Pacansky-Brock from the California Community College System talks about how to create a liquid syllabus that's easy to review on a mobile device, that incorporates video to explain concepts, that uses student-centered language. You can see a picture of my syllabus on the right that shows student-centered language rather than the typical things that you would see in a syllabus. I just give them 3 sections: about the class, about the teacher, about you, the students. And then we have different aspects of that syllabus rewritten so that they're from a student perspective. I use the word you a lot because I want students to feel like this is for and about them. And the Academic Senate for the California Community Colleges has a great resource on how we can make our syllabi more anti-racist. And so they come at it from 3 specific perspectives: validation, engagement, and sense of belonging. And they have a long list of syllabus elements framed as questions to help us think through, are we doing this in our syllabus? Questions about the accessibility of the syllabus, the use of co-created community norms, the inclusion of teacher responsibilities along with the learner responsibilities. Are we validating students being in this class? Are we addressing things like basic needs? So I encourage you to click this link. We'll make sure these slides are available in the Canvas course, but this is a useful resource for thinking through your syllabus. And I know William Hardaway from Fresno is going to walk us through some activities to think through our syllabus as well. And he's got some tools and strategies for that. So I'm looking forward to having him take over the mic in just a bit. And then because this is a cross section, the intersection, if you will, of the equity drive and flexibility lane, we need to address flexibility in our syllabus too. And that means describing what flexibility means, whether that be the course delivery methods that are in the class schedule, but also the pedagogical strategies we're going to use to increase flexibility, and what opportunities students have to take responsibility and run with it, but what responsibilities come with that opportunity. So we want to make sure students know what it means to do something asynchronously. They still have a specific time frame they need to complete work and all that stuff. Also, the flexibility might require that students need more support. And so making sure we're linking to academic and non-academic services and resources is important. See in the chat that Yazdan put, maybe we can add creating a safe environment. And yes, some people call them safe spaces. There's a different spin. Some people call them brave spaces, and they're not the same thing, but definitely like the idea of, and I think you'll see that in that Academic Senate for the California Community College resource, that they do talk about setting up the norms to make sure that respect, diversity are all part of the equation. All right, so you've heard enough from me. Hopefully, again, that sets some context and gives some basic overview of some equity concepts we need to consider as we're going through our course structure. And now I am really excited to start introducing colleagues from around the system. So I'm going to stop my recording